The second season of Fortnite Chapter 2, the one with all the henchmen and vaults and James Bond villains, started on February 20th, 2020, and while I saw some videos advertising its release, I really didn't pay it much mind. Fortnite was a game I had dabbled in a couple years ago, but had largely moved beyond. No one I knew really still played it, and one gets tired of losing to 14-year-olds who can summon a castle from the ether faster than I can switch to building mode. But then a month later, the world kinda shut down. My day job closed its office and sent me to work from home, movies stopped coming out, games got delayed, and the news seemed to get worse every day. I had a lot of free time and a need for a chill, low-stakes game that offered me new things to do on a regular basis. So I picked up Fortnite again. Which got me thinking critically about the game for the first time in probably almost 2 years. And so, like the painfully old and out-of-touch person I am, let's talk about Fortnite several years too late. For this video, I'm going to primarily cite two other works of criticism, because while I agree with both of them, they're largely at odds with each other, at times explicitly so, and I kind of wanted to examine that. First, there's Dan Olsen's piece on Fortnite, Manufactured Discontent. In it, Olsen argues that Fortnite is less a game than a series of Skinner boxes and other psychological tricks and systemic pressures designed to create a play experience that fundamentally pushes its audience, namely kids, to regularly drop money on the game. He makes it clear he's not a fan of the game proper.
Fortnite isn't really a game. Like, there's a game attached to Fortnite, but that's not the core of Fortnite. Fortnite is, first and foremost, a storefront. If you strip out everything else, the game is a moderately okay shooter with a unique twist and a compelling aesthetic. It's not dire, but it's kinda just barely good enough to stand on its own without the rest of the hooks.
Olsen also discusses the DJ Marshmello concert that was held in early 2019. Per Olsen, Fortnite wants to be seen as a content delivery platform, and in some sense it is, but only for those that have access. That is, it's a platform for synergistic advertising for companies and brands willing to ink a cross-promotional deal with Epic, but not a platform in the style of YouTube, say. We'll come back to all of this. The other piece I wanted to look at is Tevis Thompson's It's Not Coming Back. Now, this thing is kind of a tome that was written over the course of a year and a half, and I'm not going to be talking about the whole thing. It's got a meandering condemnation of the state of games criticism that I find at best misguided, and at worst pretty disagreeable, and a top 10 games of 2018 list that's fine in that it's hard to disagree with somebody's personal favorite and least favorite games of the year. None of that is really germane to today's video, though. But the final chapter, titled Game of the Generation, is an extended paean to Fortnite, and manages to capture a lot of what makes Fortnite so enjoyable to play. In it, Thompson recounts his experience with the game as a living work that changes over time, how in some ways it's more of an event than a game proper, and how the tone is utterly unlike anything else in the multiplayer game space. But Thompson's piece actually calls out Olsen's piece by name, stating that, quote, Dan Olsen's main claim is that Fortnite isn't really a game, it's a storefront. But, quote, every monetization concern is predicated on the idea that no one could actually enjoy playing Fortnite itself for its own sake. And those are kind of harsh words, but the thing is, I largely agree with both pieces, so I thought it might be worth looking at the game through both of these lenses to see if I couldn't sharpen my own understanding of what Fortnite is and whether these two positions are as irreconcilable as they seem. Fortnite's path to success was, let's say, unpredictable. Announced in a teaser trailer all the way back in 2011 with a temporary logo that we should all just be thankful they replaced, it was originally billed as a cooperative survival game. 6 years later, in July of 2017, that game finally launched, and it was basically a kind of tower defense zombie survival game meets Minecraft, where by day players would scavenge suburbia for materials and build defensive structures and traps, and then by night they would take on hordes of zombies and other assorted monsters. This version was never really that popular for all sorts of reasons. It's an overcomplicated mess of menus and systems with hero cards and defense buddy cards and an armory to research new objects, all of which had varying quality and rarity. There's a loadout for your current chosen hero that has both aesthetic and gameplay impact, and there are 4 campaigns to work your way through depending on your player level, but only if you've completed the previous campaign's quest chain. And that's the game as it stands now after a fair bit of streamlining. At launch, it mixed free-to-play style check-in progression rewards with its loot box llamas and collectible card game mechanics. It also had a tech tree that looked like this, which offered tiny percentage gains that were unlocked with those same check-in progression points. And all of this is just, it's a lot. It's a metagame and a monetization system in search of some sort of core. The whole thing was and is over-designed, over-complicated, and over-monetized, and all in support of a game that, if we're being honest, doesn't have building and crafting that's as expressive or engaging as Minecraft, nor wave-based defense third-person action gameplay that's as satisfying and strategic as, say, Orcs Must Die. And neither of those games came burdened with a maze of manipulative, free-to-play mechanics asking you to check in every day so that you can afford a 0.5% increase in shotgun damage. By all accounts, Fortnite, the game that was originally promised and the gameplay mode for which the game was named, I mean you build forts to survive the night, was kind of a failure. I bring all of this up because I think it's important to point out that the game's virtues as we know them today are largely accidental. The development studio that took 6 years to produce this muddled mess of a PvE game is the same one that turned around and produced one of the biggest multiplayer action games of all time in just 2 months. Seriously, by their own account, they started up production on the Battle Royale mode in July, just after the game's initial release, and had it out by September.
In the mid-2017 timeframe was when we were really taking it seriously. We were seeing some of the success of the other Battle Royale games. July 10th was the day that we really were like, okay, let's go. And what we shipped was about 7-8 weeks of development time.
Which is such an astounding turnaround time that, given the stories that have come out since, I kind of have to assume there was some nightmare crunch in there, but that's an assumption on my part. In my estimation, Fortnite Battle Royale's immediate and monumental success was due to 2 factors. One, it was free, which made it particularly popular with kids. See the previous video about how kids will gravitate towards free things en masse. And 2, Battle Royale games were having something of a moment. They had existed for years as Minecraft Hunger Games mods and later as Arma mods. Those Arma mods are what largely birthed PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, the first commercial Battle Royale title, which came out in March of 2017 and was all anyone could talk about that year. There simply had never been anything like it, available commercially anyway, a wholly new type of multiplayer shooter that captivated the zeitgeist with its unique mechanics. And 6 months later, there was Epic releasing a free version of this same game at the height of its surge to popularity. This was actually somewhat controversial at the time because PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds actually used the Unreal Engine, which was licensed from Epic. And here was their engine licensor creating their own riff on the exact same concept and undercutting them by releasing it for free. It's not exactly like a cheap clone scenario, but it did have awkward optics. Regardless, Fortnite Battle Royale, as it came to be known, quickly rose in popularity, easily leaving Fortnite Save the World in the dust and eventually even taking over PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds as the preeminent Battle Royale title for a while. Which leads us, finally, to the game as it stands today. Kind of. See, Fortnite is always changing. It's one of the game's strengths. Each season brings new changes to the environment, with beloved landmarks vanishing overnight. There's no permanence to the world or your relationship to it. Mechanics change, available events change, available vehicles change, available weapons change. Progression systems even change. Which makes it hard to write about Fortnite because you're not ever really writing about Fortnite as a whole, you're writing about Fortnite at the time you experienced it, which can differ pretty wildly depending on when you play. They blew up the original island at the end of Chapter 1, Season 10, and replaced it with a whole new island. Then they added James Bond-style supervillain bases that you could break into in Chapter 2, Season 2. And with the most recent update, they've flooded the map to create something of a Mad Max summer beach party, complete with giant sharks and roaming marauders. To quote Tevis Thompson, each match had an end state, but Fortnite itself went on. Its world lived in time, like me, and I found this both exhilarating and oppressive. Anything I could say seemed to become immediately outdated, unreferenceable. Wailing Woods? That was just a memory now, or a relic to glimpse in a stream archive. The fabric of Fortnite's spacetime was built from this ongoingness, and like any live thing, it was intimidating, especially for someone trying to capture it in writing, which is not ongoing, but ever-ending. But while the fluid, ever-evolving nature of the game makes it difficult to properly capture in the specifics, I do think there's been a broadly consistent approach to the game's design that can be cataloged, broken down, and discussed. And that is the fact that the emphasis of pretty much every aspect of the game, unlike any other Battle Royale game I've ever played, isn't really on the winning. Oh, sure, you want to win. Winning is fun. The adrenaline rush, the celebratory shiny text, all that stuff. But unless you're a competitive player or a streamer that needs to show off their skills to keep an audience around, that's not really why people play Fortnite. And it's not really what Fortnite tries to push you into doing either. To again quote Tevis Thompson, it's not a game for the one winner, it's a game for the 99 losers. A lot of this is conveyed in the tone. Fortnite exists in a world of comic book exaggerations of suburbia and beachfront condos and farmland and forested log cabins and industrial factories and nuclear power plants. It plays in cliches, but cliches that are largely welcoming and recognizable. Most other Battle Royale games are pretty grimdark. Call of Duty Warzone and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds take place in these grimy, run-down, vaguely Eastern European/Russian cities where the civilians have all vanished, the buildings are all bombed out and graffitied, and there's kind of a loosely post-apocalyptic feeling to everything. Even Apex Legends, despite its space fantasy setting, focus on character, and more vibrant palette, still has a distinct militarism/corporate dystopia thing in its affectation that Fortnite simply lacks. That's not to say Fortnite isn't violent, it's a third-person shooter loaded with guns, and there's certainly some discussion to be had about how games, even games with PG-13 violence, trivialize gun violence more broadly. But in comparison to the rest of the Battle Royale genre, Fortnite's weapons so often resemble brightly colored Nerf guns, especially if you have a skin applied, that they have actually been turned into Nerf guns. The rest of the Battle Royale genre kind of feel like they're aiming to be strategic paintball matches. Fun and playful in a sense, but with serious hardware in designated spaces designed for tactical engagement so no one innocent gets hurt in our war games. Fortnite is more of a water balloon fight in your backyard. It's looser with the rules, more colorful in its weapons, and is less about who wins and loses and more about everyone having a good time while beating the heat. There's also a fundamentally social aspect to the game. The intro sequence when you're waiting for players is a big dance party, a time to show off your outfit and emotes and high-five other players or kick around a beach ball. Even combat has a degree of personal interaction there. Getting shot in Call of Duty Warzone, or especially Battlegrounds, feels quick and impersonal and cold. Sniped by some other random soldier several hundred yards away. But because combat lasts a smidge longer in Fortnite, and because it tends to close distance faster due to the building mechanics, and because the costumes are so varied and outlandish, you can have memorable encounters with Deadpool, or the Golden Midas guy, or a cat person. In Fortnite, there's also the tradition of dancing after eliminating another player, taking the custom of teabagging and turning it from an offensive taunt into something more playful and more expressive. It's still braggadocious, but it's celebratory and keeps the party theme going rather than simply being a degrading insult to injury. There's so much an emphasis on the social aspects of the game that the developers added an option to thank the bus driver, an unseen character that doesn't even really exist. Meanwhile, Apex Legends' big breakthrough in social communication was making it so that tactical information could be conveyed to other players by just pointing at something and clicking a button, which is helpful in that it reduces the pressure on voice chat, which absolutely can be toxic, especially for a game that forced you to play with other people, but it's still oriented towards tactical play. It's not socializing for its own sake.
Someone's been here. Pay attention, I'm moving on them here.
But it's more than just exaggerated environments that paint in broad strokes and saturated hues, and it's more than just a few emotes and an encouragement to express yourself in the game space. The core systems of Fortnite are designed around making losing easy and fun and normalized, and to take the focus off of winning the game. For one, rounds are really short, and the time to get back into the game is really quick for a title where 100 or so people are required each round. So even if you're trying to win, and you lose, you're out maybe 20 minutes if you make it to the very end, and even then you can re-queue for the next match from within this one, something that not a lot of the battle royales let you do, so you can be up and running again in 60 to 90 seconds. The game also tries to make its side activities into minigames. Presumably learning from the active reload mechanic in Gears of War, Epic have begun taking mundane activities and turning them into their own miniature games to add depth and engagement to otherwise dull gameplay loops. And so all those little loops are now little games. Collecting resources means hitting a moving weak point with your pickaxe in an aiming minigame. Finding treasure chests full of weapons is a hide-and-seek game of listening for their angelic hum and looking for their golden shimmer, occasionally having to break down walls or objects to get to them. Swimming can be sped up if you time your jumps right, like a rhythm game, causing you to oscillate through the water like a dolphin. Even movement has modifications that can be strategic but also kind of fun to do. Grapple hooking around the terrain, using bounce pads, or even just building your way up the side of a mountain. Battle Royales are known for their downtime, and that can still happen here. I once waited an obscenely long time to try to take people out from inside of a box. Hey, I said I did it. I didn't say I was good at it. But downtime is minimized in Fortnite. There's always something else to do other than just waiting around to die, which is most of my experience with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. So the game tries to make everything lighthearted and engaging and social while minimizing the cost of losing. But from a design perspective, the core reason that the game isn't about winning is that winning simply isn't worth all that much. Like, yeah, you get an XP bonus for winning and a little umbrella if it's your first win this season, but the XP bonus is nothing like the rewards given to you by the various side missions. For those who haven't played the game, each season players progress through a battle pass by gaining experience to unlock wallpapers, emotes, and cosmetic items like backpacks, gliders, and skins. Experience is rewarded for all kinds of behavior: survival time, combat, exploring the map, scavenging, placement in a match, etc. But what really drives XP gain, and thus is the core thrust of what the game really seems to be asking you to do, are daily and weekly missions. Daily missions tend to be trivial things: open 5 treasure chests in a given area, or do 200 damage with pistols. It's a fun chore, but kinda simple. But the weekly challenges can be pretty varied and often lean on the different gimmicks going on in a given season. These missions not only offer tremendous experience boosts, but are often far more easy and likely to be completed than winning a game of Fortnite, which again, only 1 out of every 100 people in a match is going to get to do. They also gate access to additional quests and content beyond the Battle Pass. For example, before you could get to the Shadow or Ghost version of the spy characters from last season, you needed to complete a special quest, but that quest is only unlocked after you completed the character's other associated missions. So not only do these side missions help you unlock content through the Battle Pass, they also help you unlock other missions. Additionally, promotional tie-in characters have started having their own weekly missions. To unlock Deadpool required completing his weekly tasks, and currently to unlock Jason Momoa's Aquaman you need to progress through a series of activities doled out once a week. So they're not just an XP bonanza, they're also how you get at a lot of the game's content. This results in players playing to the side quests, joining a game explicitly to make progress on weekly, daily, or promotional character bounties. There's actually this weird inversion that happens, where winning the Battle Royale, ostensibly the main goal of the game, actually becomes something of the side mission in your quest to complete the actual side mission. Like, sure, if I win and get some bonus XP and this season's umbrella and a dopamine rush and some bragging rights, that'd be really cool. But really, I'm just here to open 7 ammo boxes or chests in Rickety Rig and then try to get some eliminations at Lazy Lake before I get taken out. In a sense, the side quests are the game a lot more than trying to win a Battle Royale is. It's also worth noting that some of these quests are kind of involved for what they are. Like, in the wake of Fortnite's success, most other Battle Royale games have adopted the Battle Pass system, but none of them really have been able to make it work like Fortnite because there's so much focus on winning. The core combat and pursuit of victory is what those games are fundamentally about. So that's where you get stuff like Modern Warfare's weekly challenges just being kill 5 guys with a common weapon, or pick up 5 contracts in this zone. Mostly just grindy stuff with none of the weird quirky missions that ask you to play sub-games or act in ways orthogonal to actually winning. Heck, Survive for a combined 60 minutes was a mission in Week 1 and Week 3 of Warzone's current season. There's just no variety, and honestly, the game prioritizes winning so much that you're not likely to pick up a shotgun and use it to farm some achievement for funzos. You're there to win, so you need a sniper rifle and an SMG, not to goof off with some wacky gun for experience points. Doubly so if you're playing with friends, or playing something like Apex Legends where you're forced to play with teammates, further reducing your ability to just goof around and mess with weapons or areas of the map you wouldn't normally go to. Also, and I'm just going to be honest here, the unlockable skins in these games are usually pretty terrible. They're either various flavors of military attire or they're different colors of the same set character model. And since these games prioritize highly lethal combat that's over in a blink of an eye, and don't have much of a social aspect, there's just no incentive to grind for them. Why go out of your way to play Call of Duty Warzone with a weapon you don't like just to grind eliminations for XP towards a different gruff military person skin when your friends need you at your best to win and no one really cares what military outfit you're wearing? And it's not that Fortnite doesn't have a bit of grind to its missions. That's definitely there. But they also have the ability to be way more experimental. They invite you to travel the map in weird ways, like asking you to visit 3 locations in one match, or they ask you to use different methods of transportation, or use specific weapon types, or do silly things like kick a soccer ball a certain distance. The boring, eliminate 3 players with a shotgun quests are still there, but they're mixed up with all these playful alternatives. And Fortnite's boldest missions tend to intersect with their seasonal event stuff. As stated earlier, last season each new character had quests to unlock a faction skin. For example, Mr. Meowscles required collecting a bunch of fish and then sending them to the faction of your choice in mailboxes of the appropriate team's affiliation. One of the first missions in Chapter 2 Season 3 was to attack the recently created Loot Shark from a specific point on the map. Another was to break into Caddy Corner Vault, an area protected by AI-controlled enemies and a boss character holding a key to the vault, a kitty on a robot body. So while a traditional Battle Royale game was unfurling around me, I was stealthily taking out AI-controlled goons and working my way up to the big bad, blowing up a gas station, defeating the evil kitty, and claiming not only the contents of the vault but my big XP prize as a bonus. For a bit there, I may as well have been in a different game than everyone else. And I think what's fascinating to me about this setup is that it reminds me a lot of Will Wright's idea for a romance game inside of Battlefield 1942 that he proposed at the Game Developers Conference way back in 2004.
So probably the most unique design decision I made was, well, actually before that, I wanted to put it in the theme of a war romance, just because I love those old black and white movies. And the most unique design decision I made was to inset this game inside of an existing game. Okay? So this is a game that's played entirely in something like Battlefield 1942. Okay? Now, what happens is, there's still, Battlefield 1942, just typical levels. But now there's a different class of player that now are in the same environment at the same time. And these are the non-coms, they're the civilians. And they're playing an entirely different game, okay? Having to do with finding their lost loved one, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in this game, we have 2 sets of players playing totally orthogonal games, totally different goals. And I want to leave the intersection between those 2 totally undefined. And that's what's really interesting about this, is by leaving that undefined, it's totally up to the players to decide, maybe the soldiers will decide to kill all the civilians. They're like rats or vermin. Or maybe they might decide to help small groups of civilians. I think a lot of players, once they meet up, they're just going to find a safe spot, a little barn to hide in, and sit there and chat, and that's fine, because I want to leave the goal structure of the second game very open-ended. A lot of players will be playing this for points. Other ones will be playing it kind of more as a chat room with an interesting kind of environment around them.
And it's crazy that this hypothetical scenario, a bunch of people doing some goofy social stuff while a Battlefield game rages around them, was kind of laughed at the time as absurd. And now it kind of exists, at least in some sense. There are people playing Fortnite to win, and there are people that just need to complete their challenges, and they are in the same game space, but playing at cross purposes. And that's just really neat. Quoting Thompson again, put all of this together with a battle pass that actually encourages exploration, that values interactions beyond headshots, that rewards you with more costumes and emotes to bring you to the party, and you have a battle royale with the edge taken off. A block party that wants to make sure everybody's having a good time while they lose. A block that doesn't even care who wins. And that sentiment there is why I've enjoyed my time with this game so much. But it's also, I think, part of why the game gets dismissed as a game for kids, which has always sat wrong with me. Don't get me wrong, I love some good old-fashioned tactical gameplay. I like playing to win in a competitive space as much as anyone, and those are totally valid design goals. I play Warzone and Apex with my friends pretty regularly. But the focus is still on winning. Like, here's some post-game conversation between my friends from a recent match.
I can give some constructive feedback. Glitch, you and Dicesoft were spending a lot of time talking about the guys you were shooting at, and we were trying to figure out where we were supposed to go.
I mean,
and I didn't
the
feel
guys
like...
behind us, if we let them get behind us and stay behind us, we're going to have to deal with them at some point. So
sure.
It was best if we all would have focused on them,
then
we could have gotten them dead.
It's not calm and fun and social, it's serious planning on how to win. But that's okay, because I play those games to win and not to chill. But I think having a chill battle royale is also a valid design goal. Like, if you want another relaxing party game that still makes begrudging room for a high-level competitive scene, features PG-13 violence, has a sizable audience under the age of 18, and is all about that cynical cross-promotional synergy, there's always Super Smash Bros.
Colors weave into a spire of flame. Distant sparks call to a past still unnamed.
But despite the similarities, Smash Bros. Doesn't get dismissed out of hand as often. It's not seen as a shallow novelty for kids the way Fortnite is. Some of that is no doubt the storied histories of the characters in Smash, which, in the absurd world of video games, demand to be taken seriously, because Mario. And some of that is probably just the way that Fortnite is obnoxiously try-hard at being hip to appease the youths. But I think a lot of it is also the design ethos at its core. Like, Smash Bros., even when it's set to full-on random items party with friends mode, is still about winning. Fortnite can take or leave it. So the general response to Fortnite tends to be that it's not a for serious battle royale the way Warzone or Apex are. It's Fisher-Price's Babby's First Battle Royale, and that's probably not helped by stuff like, again, Nerf guns. But the way we kind of dismiss that hangout vibe in favor of games that either focus on pure competition and skill or self-serious narrative is maybe a lapse in our collective discourse. All that is to say that I enjoy playing Fortnite, especially as a low-stakes, relaxing set of tasks that can become a bit ritualized. I've brought this up before. Destiny and Animal Crossing have met this need for me in the past, and right now Fortnite is really bringing it. Decompression through dissociation, feeling productive in an unproductive world by checking tasks off a box in pursuit of some longer-term goal. Still gotta get that Aquaman. Whether I have just 20 minutes to play or 3 hours, I can swing in, make some progress on some random missions, unlock a few new items, and sometimes walk away with a cool gameplay story in the process. I don't know if I'd go so far as to agree with Thompson that Fortnite is quote-unquote the game of the generation, but I do agree that Fortnite is a uniquely singular experience that has been largely overlooked in favor of more self-serious or narrative-driven fare. But I can't really get over Thompson's dismissal of Olsen's claims. Because as fun as Fortnite is to play, and as refreshing as its summer block party tone has been during these dark times, it is definitely still a game embedded in a live service platform with lots of problems. Olsen's video landed on April 1st of 2019 and deals primarily with two concepts: the manipulative economic systems that Fortnite uses to pressure its audience, who are again mostly young people, into spending money, and the concept of Fortnite attempting to turn itself into something of a platform for content delivery in the wake of the Marshmello concert held in February of that year. Now, I don't think I could cover all of the psychological tricks Fortnite uses better than he does, but they have been streamlined a bit in Chapter 2. The 2-track system has been condensed to just a single track with a few of the rewards marked free for unpaying players, with all the best stuff carved out for paying players, of course. The obnoxious star system has been removed though. Now free players can grind right alongside paying players without the painful 4th daily mission not being accessible. In lieu of that, they mostly just tell you all the cool stuff you could be unlocking right now if you just bought the damn pass. You already leveled up, they're yours, you just need to come claim them. But the funny money that makes figuring out how much things cost impossible is still there. The lack of being able to set even basic options about your avatar if you're unpaid are still there. The store that tries to make content a perpetually rolling set of timed exclusives, so act now before it's too late, are still there too. While writing this episode, Epic released a Captain America costume for the 4th of July. It cost 2,000 V-Bucks, with an extra 300 V-Bucks for the fireworks emote, which means that assuming you had 0 V-Bucks to start with, you'd need to spend 26 USD and change to buy it. More than a lot of entire indie games. And that's an absurd amount of money for a single skin. But if you want to buy it, you had better gosh dang hurry up and drop that 26 bucks right now. They've had skins for Kylo Ren and Rey and Deadpool and Harley Quinn and John Wick, and if you didn't play the game while they were on offer, sorry, your opportunity has passed to buy your favorite characters. But if you act now, you can avoid missing these limited time Elvis collectible plates, Marvel Fortnite skins. When Olsen described the concept of FOMO, he's describing just like normal items in the store.
In contrast to pretty much every other game on the market, Fortnite only displays 10 to 13 items at a time, rotating on a daily basis. This has the dual purpose of obfuscating what's available and creating a FOMO response, or fear of missing out.
And that's bad enough that you can't already buy these cool lady assassin skins whenever you just have the money. But there's something even more insidious about tying your licensed promotional material to short, weeks-long sales where you either get on board immediately or you miss your chance entirely. Because unlike normal Epic-produced skins, there's very little chance that a skin owned by a third party can just come up for sale again after the promotion's over. It's not impossible, and it depends on the deal, but you don't know what the deal looks like. Also still present are the social pressures to express yourself in the game space.
Events like the concert create environments where the ability to self-express is placed at a premium. In order to feel like a full and active participant, you need to be able to perform. The catch is that literally every unique action has an attached price tag.
Because of the party atmosphere and the emphasis on expression in the game space, you're encouraged to socialize. Again, the game has sort of a dance party vibe to it, so there's all these social pressures to get a cool outfit or buy the necessary emotes. Olsen points out that the DJ Marshmallow set made several calls to bust out your favorite emotes.
Let me see everybody doing that marsh walk right now. Let me see that marsh walk. Find your squad and let me see your favorite emotes. Let me see what you got. Let's go. All right, I want to see everybody doing their favorite emote right now. Let's drop. Let's go.
It really doesn't seem like that's an accident. The recent Diplo concert on June 24th did the same thing.
When you hear this guitar, I want to see you guys doing a emote. Put them up, put them up.
And again in the Diplo concert in May.
If you're feeling good, let me see those emotes. Let me see those emotes. The fishing one, the Major Lazer one.
These calls to action are so rigid in their formulation and so absurd to say in any other context that they really don't feel like a DJ pumping up the crowd so much as an entertainer fulfilling a contractual obligation to their venue. In effect, these concerts become synergistic marketing opportunities for both Epic and the brand. Marshmello and Diplo get to advertise their new album, and Fortnite reaps increased engagement metrics and additional pressure on players to look cool and dance cool in the shared social space by spending money on costumes and emotes. This is a core part of the appropriation criticism that Epic has faced. It's not just that they took popular dances, often from black creators, and then put them in Fortnite, it's that the dances became a bedrock of their monetization scheme, effectively taking choreography produced by others for free and selling it back to kids without attribution for profit in a storefront that faked scarcity to make sure you bought the latest trend dance while it was still hip before it disappeared forever. And suddenly the low-stakes hangout party nature of the game twists a bit. You start to realize that the party atmosphere is there not so much for the benefit of the players, so much as the benefit of the developers and Fortnite as a platform. Like, dances only make sense as a sellable emote because the whole game is framed as a dance party, except this is a dance party where casual violence is free, but the dancing is monetized. The social aspect of the game that makes it so different from other battle royales is also what is weaponized to make you feel obligated to buy things. Sure, you can play the game of Fortnite and it's okay, but you can't really party like the cool kids unless you front some cash. The party atmosphere also benefits Epic's cross-promotional attempts. You can't have Aquaman and Deadpool and Stormtroopers all showing up in Call of Duty Warzone to fight each other, because that'd just be silly. But in the exaggerated cartoon world of Fortnite where anything goes, sure!
I'm a kitty, kitty, kitty. I'm a cat. If you mess with me, you're gonna get scratched.
The cartoon tone and the artificiality of the aesthetic become a means for them to cross-promote whatever they want or need. With their new Party Royale mode, where they've been streaming their concerts and movies, they've developed a whole new island purely designed around synergistic tie-ins and goofing off, a place for streaming promotional material in the middle of the ball, a party as PR consumption made manifest. And the promotions aren't just limited to concerts and character outfits either. The upcoming Christopher Nolan film Tenet actually premiered its second trailer in Fortnite before releasing the trailer to the general internet earlier this year. It was then followed up by a June 26 showing of Inception, or in international markets Batman Begins or The Prestige. All were Christopher Nolan movies distributed by Warner Brothers that were ostensibly part of Warner Brothers' marketing campaign for Tenet. Side note, can I just point out how terrible it is that as of this writing, Christopher Nolan is trying to get Tenet into theaters well before they're safe, at least in this country, in order to ensure that his film is one of the blockbusters that quote-unquote saves the theatrical experience? And while I get that he probably has minimal say over how the film is marketed, there's something really ironic about promoting the release of a film that's asking audiences to literally die to preserve that traditional theater-going experience by running the director's other movies in a screen within a screen in a cartoon world where people run around you, dancing and jumping, and there's a big avatar taking up the center of your frame. Watching Inception like this is not making me miss movies with other people. Also, I think it was due to the server slowly depopulating as we approached 2 a.m., but the server decided to boot me from the movie with 2 minutes left and I missed the whole ending scene, managing to get back just in time to see the title card as the credits rolled. The whole thing is just, it's not an optimal way to stream a movie. Anyway, Party Mode's content also ties in with what Olsen said about whose content Epic has geared this platform to deliver.
The actual audience for this specific message is big-name collaborators. Epic is advertising the idea that Fortnite is a viable venue for crossover promotional opportunities.
On July 4th, Epic's Party Mode ran We the People, a short about Black Lives Matter, race, and police brutality in America. There was nothing really wrong with the content, and honestly, if it sparked some conversations about systemic racism along the way, all's the better. But the We the People segment was also produced by Opus United, a PR firm that's the same PR firm that got Travis Scott his own Fortnite concert. And a PR firm with a history of working with Epic running a pro-Black Lives Matter special on the 4th of July on a platform that got bad press after being accused of appropriating black culture for profit is, well, it raises questions. They could just as easily have run this on YouTube for free and gotten a far wider potential audience, but they chose Fortnite, and one has to ask why, especially when this is how people are watching your serious conversation about race relations. To be clear, I don't know if Opus United represents Fortnite, I don't know who they represent at all, and I don't want to put on a tinfoil hat and make accusations. The content and messaging of the piece were fine, and maybe the project was done with 100% earnestness by all parties. But it at best has awkward optics and underscores how the platform holder's financial interests and focus on big brands and PR firms don't so much make it a content delivery platform as an advertising service where nothing can be taken at face value because someone stands to profit, even if it isn't clear who. There's nothing wrong with Epic trying to make money from their game. A dev team's gotta eat. But there is something cynical at the core of Fortnite's perpetual party. It's like slowly realizing you're at a party thrown by Jay Gatsby. It isn't that people aren't having fun or that good times aren't being had, but at some point you realize the whole party is being thrown for the wrong reasons and none of them have to do with the guests. It's an unending party, but it's a party in order to get you to lower your guard and be receptive to branding. In a very real way, the design philosophy that birthed the over-monetized Fortnite Save the World is still very much here in Fortnite Battle Royale. It's just that they replaced formal and in-your-face extrinsic motivators and systemic pressures with more insidious informal ones that don't feel as immediately designed. In place of daily check-ins for rewards and pay-to-win loot boxes, it's watching people have fun while you're excluded from that fun, or being asked to have fun while being sold something. Finally, there's one other thing that should at least be touched on. As great as it is that the game has this ever-evolving landscape, perpetually churning mechanic and progression systems, and beautiful new art and player models to unlock, all of that comes at a cost to developers. Traditional games tend to have a few mini-crunches for trade shows or big demos, then one last huge crunch at the end of their release. But Fortnite is perpetually releasing. Seasons tend to end about every 10 weeks, and new seasons mean new content. And every week there has to be a patch to release new weekly missions or progress ongoing events like Deadpool's quests. So Fortnite's entire model is, in some ways, predicated on perpetual crunch. To quote Polygon's unnamed source at Epic, quote, "I hardly sleep, I'm grumpy at home, I have no energy to go out. Getting a weekend away from work is a major achievement. If I take a Saturday off, I feel guilty. I'm not being forced to work this way, but if I don't, then the job won't get done." There's a bitter irony there, I think. Making the game that's all about being the low-stakes, easygoing alternative to hardcore battle royales is itself an unyieldingly stressful experience. And as much comfort as the game's given me these past few months, I'm not sure its collectible pop culture detritus and missions to fly under bridges in the middle of a match and nonsense storyline are worth endangering people's health, marriages, or even just their free time. Like, I've established I enjoy playing the game, but if there's no way to ethically make it with the current model, then maybe that model is fundamentally unethical and we need to move away from it. So where does all of this leave us? Like I said at the outset, I kind of agree with both Tevis Thompson's piece and Dan Olsen's piece. What Dan Olsen overlooks, I think, is that there's a genuinely interesting battle royale doing things no other game is doing. What Thompson overlooks is that even if the game is pioneering and fantastic in some ways, it is cynical and even potentially harmful in others. But Fortnite can be both of these things. One doesn't preclude the other. It's a game that embraces its own absurdity and the fact that most of its players will constantly lose. In a sea of dour, hyper-militarized battle royale shooters where victory is the only outcome worthwhile, it celebrates goofing off and jamming to tunes and playing dress-up more than nabbing a brass ring. It's a game that's as much an event as it is a piece of media, an ever-changing game with an ever-changing landscape. At the same time, it is undeniably a game with an exploitative storefront. Exploitative not in novel ways, but in really boring ones, the same ones that are used in every other digital storefront. It's a billboard that tries to turn advertisements into content, convincing you to grind for product placement, or to tune in to receive promotional material. It's also a game whose bottomless demand for content, new player models, emotes, level alterations, weapons and items, vehicles, quests, and more, reportedly turns its development into a perpetual grind for developers. And I don't really know how to conclude this piece other than to say my feelings on the game are complicated. Fortnite is a wonderful little party that, as a game, is unfairly maligned or ignored in some ways. But as a guest of that party, it's also probably a good idea to keep in mind who it's being thrown for, what it's being thrown in celebration of, and who's actually paying for it. Till next time.